all the viewers. I hope all of you are doing well. I am Dr. Divyansha Kumar from Chitkara University, Punjab, and in today's lecture, we will be discussing the different aspects of capital in the economic theory as a part of Economics and Law 1. Let's begin by understanding the basic concepts first. So, the different aspects of capital in economic theory refers to the durable products that are produced in economics and are utilized as productive inputs for the subsequent production of goods and services. It is essentially the economic toolkit which includes a wide range of assets, including physical assets such as apparatus, structures and infrastructure, as well as intangible assets such as knowledge, skill and financial resources. Capital is a factor of production that is produced as opposed to labor, which is a human input. For example, a factory is a produced commodity that contributes to the production of other products. It is considered capital. In the same vein, a computer that is employed to design products is considered capital, as it improves the production process. It is crucial to note that capital is not consumed during the production process. Rather, it depreciates over time as a result of its use. In addition to physical capital, economists acknowledge that the abilities and knowledge that individuals possess is a crucial form of capital. This expands the concept to encompass education, training and experience, all of which make substantial contributions to economic productivity. Capital is fundamentally the accumulated wealth of an economy that is employed to produce additional wealth. It is a fundamental component of economic expansion as it enables the expansion of production capacity, innovation and efficiency. Now, let's talk about the different theories of economics. The first being the classic theory. The foundation for comprehending the function of capital in the economy was established by classical economics, which was primarily developed by Adam Smith, David Ricardo and John Stuart Mill. These individuals perceived capital as an essential component of production, in addition to labor and land. Their viewpoint was founded on agricultural and industrial revolutions, during which physical capital, including apparatus and tools, was evidently revolutionizing production processes. The significance of capital accumulation for economic development was underscored by classical economists. Furthermore, they contended that societies could enhance their productive capacity by investing in capital products, which would result in increased output and enhanced living standards. They were of the opinion that this accumulation was predominantly motivated by the reinvestment of profits and savings. The concept of abstinence was of paramount importance, as it implied that individuals who opted to save and invest rather than consume were contributing to the formation of capital. Additionally, classical economists acknowledged the significance of capital in determining the distribution of income. They hypothesized that the proportion of income allocated to entrepreneurs or the owners of capital would be contingent upon the productivity of capital in comparison to labor. The proportion of income that is allocated to capitalists has the potential to increase as technology advances and capital accumulation increases. Nevertheless, they also recognize the possibility of diminishing returns on capital, which would result in a potential decline in productivity gains from further capital investment. Although classical theory offers a fundamental framework for comprehending capital, its constraints become evident in the context of contemporary economics. The dynamic character of capital and its interaction with other factors such as human capital and technological change, are overlooked due to the emphasis on physical capital and a static view of technology. However, the classical perspective continues to be a beneficial starting point for the examination of the role of capital in economic systems. Second, we talk about the Keynesian economics. John Maynard Keynes came up with the Keynesian economics, which provided a unique perspective on capital. In contrast to classical economics, which emphasizes the long term and the influence of supply side factors, Keynesian theory is more concerned with the role of demand side factors and short term fluctuations in economic activity. Capital is instrumental in determining the level of investment and, as a result, aggregate demand within this framework. Keynes contended that economic development is significantly stimulated by capital goods investment. He underscored the unpredictable nature of investment expenditure, which can result in fluctuations in the overall economy. This decision to invest in capital products is influenced by a variety of factors, such as the overall level of economic activity, interest rates, and prospects for future profitability. Keynes introduced the concept of animal spirits to encapsulate the psychological factors that influence investors' confidence and investment decisions. Keynesian economics is fundamentally concerned with the relationship between saving and investment. Unlike classical economists, who believe that saving inevitably transmute into investment, Keynes contended that there is no inherent guarantee that saving will equal investment. He actually proposed that saving and investment are independently determined. A recession results when aggregate demand is insufficiently stimulated due to an excess of saving over investment. In contrast, inflation may result when investment surpasses savings. Keynes favored government intervention in the economy as a solution to the issue of insufficient investment and demand. He contended the government has the ability to stimulate economic activity by either increasing government expenditure or reducing taxation, which can increase aggregate demand. These policies, which are frequently referred to as fiscal policy, can assist in bridging the disparity between saving and investment and preventing the economy from entering a recession. The significance of monetary policy in influencing investment and economic activity is also emphasized in Keynesian economics. Central banks can influence the cost of financing for businesses and consumers by managing interest rates. Economic growth can be stimulated by lowering interest rates, which can lead to increased investment and consumption. Nevertheless, the efficacy of monetary policy may be restricted during economic crisis, as banks may be hesitant to lend even at lower interest rates. Next, we will talk about the neoclassical economics. Neoclassical economics offers a fundamental framework for comprehending capital. It regards capital as a factor of production that, in addition to labor and land, contributes to the production process. The concept of marginal productivity is essential to this perspective, as it posits that the additional output produced by an additional unit of capital decreases as the aggregate capital stock increases. Investment decisions are influenced by this principle of diminishing returns. Firms will allocate capital investments until the marginal productivity of capital is equivalent to its rental price. The neoclassical theory also includes the time dimension of capital. Capital products are frequently long-lasting, offering services for extended periods. the concept of capital accumulation is introduced, which is the process by which the existing capital stock is enhanced by the investment of new capital products, thereby generating potential economic development. Nevertheless, the productivity of capital is diminished over time as a result of depreciation. A critical component of neoclassical capital theory is its correlation with interest rates. The rate of return on capital is influenced by time preference, which is the extent to which individuals prioritize present consumption over future consumption. Investing is discouraged by higher interest rates, which are a consequence of a greater preference for time. In contrast, a lower time preference encourages investment and saving. Production functions are frequently implemented by neoclassical economists to stimulate the interplay between capital, labor and output. For instance, the Cobb-Douglas production function is frequently implemented to illustrate the integration of these variables in the production of products and services. This function demonstrates a constant return to scale, which implies that the output doubles when all inputs are doubled. Although neoclassical theory provides valuable insights, it is also subject to criticism. Some contend that it oversimplifies the intricacies of capital, disregarding factors such as technological change and externalities. Furthermore, the neoclassical model's assumption of flawless competition, which is frequently the foundation of these models, may not accurately present real-world market conditions. However, the neoclassical approach continues to be a fundamental component of economic analysis and offers a valuable starting point for comprehending the nature of capital in economy. Last is the endogenous growth theory. This theory is in stark contrast to conventional economic models, which frequently regarded technological advancements as exogenous factors, indicating that they occurred outside the model and were unaccounted for. This theory posits that economic growth is predominantly driven by endogenous factors, which are factors that are determined within the model itself. A fundamental presumption is that sustained economic development is contingent upon technological advancement, human capital accumulation and knowledge creation. In contrast to exogenous growth models, which anticipate declining returns to capital, endogenous growth theory permits the possibility of constant or increasing returns to capital, provided that there is an adequate investment in infrastructure, education, research and development. This suggests that economies can accomplish sustainable growth without relying solely on external factors such as technological disruptions. The function of knowledge as a public benefit is a critical component of endogenous growth theory. Knowledge can be shared and utilized by others without compromising its value to its original creator once it has been generated. This attribute promotes the investment in research and development, as the advantages can be disseminated extensively. Additionally, the theory underscores the significance of spillover effect, which occur when knowledge produced in one sector is transferred to other sectors of the economy. This network effect serves to substantiate the notion that technological advancement is a self-reinforcing process. Another critical element is human capital, which refers to the skills and knowledge that are inherent in individuals. The productivity of the workforce is increased as a result of investments in education and training, which in turn stimulates economic growth. The significance of government policies and institutions in promoting innovation and entrepreneurship is also underscored by endogenous growth theory. Incentives for individuals and firms to invest in research and development can be generated by supportive government policy, robust intellectual property rights, and a conducive business environment resulting in sustained economic growth. Although endogenous growth theory provides a cogent explanation for long-term economic development, it also subjects to criticism. Some contend it overlooks the significance of other factors such as natural resources and capital accumulation and overemphasizes the role of knowledge and technology. Furthermore, the empirical verification of the theory is complicated by the ongoing challenge of measuring intangible assets such as human capital and knowledge. However, endogenous growth theory has had a substantial impact on economic policy making, as numerous countries have prioritized investments in infrastructure, research and development, and education to foster long-term economic prosperity. Now let's talk about the capital and interest. Interest is the cost incurred in exchange for the utilization of capital. This fundamental economic concept serves as the foundation for a wide range of financial transactions, including personal loans and international trade. It is a fundamental component of capitalist system affecting economic growth, consumption and investment. Interest is fundamentally a compensation for postponing consumption. Essentially, when individuals or businesses lend money, they are exchanging present products for future ones. The price they charge for this deferral is the interest rate. The willingness to lend is contingent upon factors such as inflation, expectations, risk, and time preference, that is, the preference for present consumption over future consumption. Interest is the expenditure of capital from the borrower's perspective. It is the cost incurred when utilizing the funds of another individual. Businesses frequently borrow to finance investment in capital products, including apparatus, equipment, and factories. The decision to invest is contingent upon the anticipated return on the investment in comparison to the cost of financing. The relationship between capital and interest is cyclical. Borrowing and investment are typically discouraged by higher interest rates, which can impede economic growth. In contrast, economic expansion can be facilitated by reduced interest rates, which can encourage borrowing and investment. Nevertheless, the relationship is not always unambiguous, as investment decisions are also influenced by other factors such as technological advancements and investor confidence. The concept of interest is inextricably linked to the concept of capital, which is fundamental to economic theory. Interest is the compensation for the use of capital, which is a productive asset that is employed to produce output. For centuries, economic thought has been preoccupied with the interplay between capital and interest. Capital was considered a critical factor of production, in addition to land and labor, by classical economists such as Adam Smith and David Ricardo. They emphasized the importance of the accumulation of physical capital in the acceleration of economic growth. interest was a recompense for abstinence to them, as it represented the sacrifice of current consumption for future production. This perspective established the idea that economic expansion would be stimulated by a higher rate of saving, which would result in increased capital accumulation. The relationship between capital and interest was formalized by neoclassical economics, which built on the classical framework through the concept of marginal productivity. The marginal productivity of capital is the determining factor in the interest rate as per this theory. The marginal productivity of capital decreases as it increases, resulting in a downward sloping demand curve for capital. The equilibrium interest rate is determined by the interaction between the supply of capital and the demand, which is influenced by saving and investment decisions. Austrian economists, including Karl Menger and Eugen Boehm-Bawerk, provided a unique perspective on interest and capital. They emphasized the time dimension of production, contending that capital products are manufactured over time to meet future needs. In their opinion, interest is a premium for waiting that reflects the time preference of individuals. This time preference generates a demand for immediate consumption, as individuals typically favor present goods over future goods. In order to encourage individuals to save and invest, a positive interest rate is required to account for the delayed gratification. Keynesian economics introduced a more intricate perspective on interest and capital. Keynes underscored the significance of expectations and uncertainty in investment decisions while also acknowledging the role of marginal productivity. He contended that the anticipated profitability of capital projects, which is susceptibility to fluctuations in business confidence, influences investment. In this context, the interest rate influences investment demand, but it is not entirely determined by the marginal productivity of capital. Central bank actions can influence interest rates, thereby stimulating investment and economic activity through monetary policy. Neo-Ricardian and post-Keynesian economists have questioned certain fundamental assumptions of neoclassical capital theory. They contend that the concept of homogeneous capital stock is artificial and that the measurement of capital is problematic. Their emphasis is also on the influence of institutional factors and power relations on the distribution of income, which includes the return on capital. The relationship between capital and growth has been the subject of significant debate in recent decades. The role of technological progress and human capital in generating long-term economic development is underscored by endogenous growth theory, which was developed by Robert Solow and others. Although physical capital remains significant, its influence on growth may be decreasing over time. Now let's talk about the challenges. Despite its foundational nature, the economic theory of capital is characterized by complexities and disagreements. Correctly defining and quantifying capital is one of the most significant obstacles. Although physical capital such as apparatus is relatively tangible, intangible assets such as intellectual property, human capital, and natural capital present substantial measurement challenges. This ambiguity complicates the comparison of capital across various economies and time periods. The Cambridge capital controversies of the mid-20th century underscored fundamental disagreements regarding the nature and function of capital. the central issue of the debate was whether capital could be meaningfully aggregated into a singular measure as neoclassical economics frequently presumed. Critics contended that capital is heterogeneous and that the consolidation of various categories of capital into a singular value is problematic. This controversy called the validity of employing production functions to elucidate income distribution and economic development into question. The treatment of depreciation is another obstacle. The value of capital assets decreases as they age or become obsolete. It is essential to accurately account for depreciation in order to ascertain the true profitability of investments and to calculate the correct value of capital stock. Nevertheless, it can be challenging to determine depreciation rates, particularly for intangible assets. Issues of income inequality are also intertwined with the concept of capital. Disparities in wealth and income are the result of the concentration of capital ownership and control in the hands of a relatively small portion of the population. This raises concerns regarding the equitable distribution of economic benefits and the government's role in addressing inequality. In conclusion, capital theory is both complex and contested despite its foundational nature. It is the subject of ongoing debate regarding its measurement, function in growth and distribution. The Indian context presents distinctive challenges such as results of its rural economy, informal sector and infrastructure deficits. With this, we come to the end of our lecture. Thank you.